Boo! Hello, it's Unicorn Hole. And though I am normally your friendly neighborhood Nintendo Core guy, I would argue that Uhole has a pretty well established relationship with horror and spooky things. Take, for example, Unicorn Hole's creepy Cabin, my horror indie retro puzzle RPG maker game in which you collect spooky tracks by Uhole. Over the years, my music has celebrated Resident Evil, Castlevania, Slender Man, and other indie horror, as well as scary aspects of the Mario series and Zelda and Pokemon 2. The first chapter of the NCU actually has a full song dedicated to a scary story being told around a campfire in the woods at night. In the past and future episodes of Down the Unicorn Hole, I've asked my guest if they have any personal experiences with the paranormal, spooky, unexplained type stuff. And in this video, I'm going to be answering that question myself. The answer is no. Video's over. Cut. Well, to start off, I'm a huge fan of horror and the paranormal. I've been known to hang out in abandoned schools and cemeteries and, creepy places at night, generally. I have visited paranormal museums and I've even made hundreds of dollars off of a ghost video that I captured, but that's a story for another time. That's not a joke, that's real. That money went directly into this shelf. You better believe it. You've heard of blood money? This is ecto money. I have one experience in the cryptid category, one experience in the unexplained stuff in the sky category, and then a handful in the ghost category. And I will talk about them now in that order. When I was younger, very early in the morning, my mom would wake me up at her house and drive me to my dad's, where I would go back to sleep until it was time to get up for school because of her work schedule. So during these drives, I would try to stay as sleepy as I could, right? I would just barely wake up enough to get to the car and then drag my ass to bed and go back to sleep. It was in that super sleepy state that I saw this cryptid-y thing, so this is perhaps the most dubious of my stories. The drive is only about 10 minutes long, and I will say I've never had any other experiences where I wasn't sure if something was a dream or if it was real. Well, there is one that turned out to be real for sure. That's a wild story. I'll tell that one sometime too. Anyway, the cryptid. So we're coming down a rural road where on our right there's a fence with barbed wire across the top of it because it's an airport. And in the split second that our headlights are fall on this thing, I see something on top of the fence, falling over it. Like the moment that I make out that there's something on the fence, it flops over and then we've driven past and I can't see it anymore. So to the best of my recollection, I would describe the thing as brown and furry. Not that I saw hair, but I got the impression that it was like a mammal, I guess. And it looked like maybe 5 feet long, but no limbs, no features, no limbs, no head or face or horns or anything. If I had to make a guess as to what it was and I had to pick something, more normal, I would say a deer, I guess, and it was just turned in such a way that I didn't see any limbs, and I guess a deer could make it over a fence. I mean, it was a pretty tall fence, but it was just a split second. I saw something brown flop over the top and hit the ground. And in my memory, I asked my mom, did you see that? And she said, yeah, what was it? And I was like, I don't know. And that was about as much as conversation as we had about it. In my mom's memory, this is not a thing. She doesn't remember this at all. So either she doesn't remember it at all because she didn't see it as well as I did, or I guess I could have dreamt it, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like a dream. And like I said, I've not confused the two before. Also might be worth mentioning, many years before this, I don't even think I was born yet, or maybe I was not making memories yet, that age. My mom saw something along that fence herself. And my mom is not someone that I've ever known to be afraid. And when she got home, she wouldn't get out of her car until someone came and walked her into the house because she was afraid of what she saw. And she will not talk about it. To this day, I can't get her to talk to me about it. My dad told me that story. So maybe that plays into it. I don't know. Okay, next up is my unexplained thing in the sky. So Dustin E., who is guested on a lot of Uhole stuff, part of Uhole Live, and my stepsister and I were on our back deck at my dad's house, and we were just hanging out, chatting. It was nighttime because the summer in the South is a bazillion degrees, so if you want to go out and get some fresh air, you do it at night. So we were just chilling on the deck talking, and we saw a thing moving across the sky. It just looked like a dot, like a star, but it had a tail. Per Dustin's memory, I didn't exactly remember that. I talked to him yesterday to refresh my memory. He said he remembers a tail, so we're going to roll with that. Had a tail, but what caught our eye was that it had like what we've called since then an aura around it, like big. Like if the dot was here, it was like this. So it was moving across the sky pretty slowly, and we just sat there and watched it, and I thought about going to get my cam recorder. I had a Sony High 8, but I figured the video would be shitty, and if something cool happened, I would miss it. And something cool did happen. Once it got about halfway across the sky, we'll say, it exploded. Emanating from the point, from the center, a circle came out from it. It was white at first, and it faded, like slowly became more and more transparent until it disappeared. We literally were expecting to feel a shockwave or to hear it like moments later, but that never happened. And once that happened, the aura was gone, and there were two dots. One kind of kept going horizontal. I think it had a downward trajectory, but not by much if so. And the other dot did. It went down at like 45 degrees. Came down pretty sharply after the explosion. We've talked about maybe it was a rocket that dropped they split, they break that one part off. I don't know anything about rockets, but maybe it was that, but there appeared to be an explosion, and I feel like you wouldn't see that. We talked about like breaking the sound barrier or breaking through the atmosphere. I'm just saying shit though, I don't know, man. We didn't ever see anything else like later that night or anything. We never saw anything about it on the news. We checked for the next couple of days thinking maybe like a space station blew up or something, but that was all we ever got. If you have any idea what that might have been, let me know. You probably gathered that this video is not as scripted as they normally are, but I thought it would be more fun to just tell them to you like from my memory. So as for the ghosty stuff, I've had seances before. I've messed around with Ouija boards. I've done the speak and record with the tape player and stuff like that, and we've had some results with some of it. I'll start off with a seance story. My dad was leading a seance at his house. My dad's birthday is Halloween. He's always been obsessed with the paranormal and monsters. He's like classic Universal monsters kind of guy, but he's big into this type of stuff too. And so he was leading a seance with me and my friends and some of the family. There was a lot of us there. I want to say between like 5 and 12 people. We were in the living room. We kept asking for a sign and asking questions and stuff like that, and nothing happened for a little while. But then we heard something like a little crash sound in the kitchen. And so we wrapped up and then went into the kitchen, and the glass window of our toaster oven had broken. There was no one else in the house. The toaster oven was not on. It hadn't been used recently. It probably hadn't been used that day. And the glass didn't explode out or explode in. There was glass in and out, as if it just like crumbled down, Thought that was pretty strange. Don't know if it like glass wears down on a toaster oven over time, but the timing of it, pretty weird. Moving on to Ouija board stuff. I know that like you subconsciously influence where it's gonna go. I understand the explanation for it, and even if it's all just your mind making answers and stuff, that's still cool as shit, so I'm down. To that point, we used to be, I can remember us guessing out loud, like we would say, what is your name? And we'd get a P, and we'd be like, Philip, and then it would go to A, and we'd be like, Patrick, and then it would go to U, and I'm like, oh, okay, Paul, and it would go to L, so it's like we're talking to a Paul. But all of us were guessing out loud, and none of us were right, so if someone was doing it intentionally, that's some next level shit. We would also frequently do a thing where we would ask what year they were born, what year they died, and how old they were when they died, and we would check later to see if the math checked out. And I know that one of us might have been able to do the math in our heads, but I wasn't doing it. I was just writing down numbers, and when we checked them later, they would normally either be right or be pretty close, like within a few years, So we used to always write this stuff down, and I have a piece of paper, several, like a notebook with all this stuff written down up in my attic. I did not feel like digging it out for this video. That would be a several hour endeavor, I think, but one day I'll dig it up and post these pictures. But the craziest Ouija board experience we ever had, like just the wildest one, was we asked the name and it spelled Flaw. And we said, your name is Flaw? And it went to no. And we said, what is your name? And it spelled flaw again. And so we're like, okay, you want to tell us that something is flawed? And it said yes. And we said, what is flawed? And it spelled Plan. Like, okay, plan. Whose plan? And it spelled God. And then we said, what is the flaw with God's plan? And it spelled Hel. And it just stayed there. And it didn't move anymore after that. So we dismissed that one, and we were done for the night, as it turns out. This may have been the same time. I'm not positive. But one time we were using the Ouija board in the wee hours of the morning, like after midnight, and something hit the wall of my bedroom from outside. And we dismissed it, and we all ran out there quick and looked around. We expected there to be like a bat or a bird on the ground or something, but we found nothing. One last Ouija board story that I remember. A friend of mine's dad had passed away pretty recently, and he had his dad's wallet, and he wanted to try to reach him on the Ouija board. So we did it, and it was moving, we were getting some stuff, but it was all kind of questionable. Sometimes when we were recording it, if the planchette landed between two letters, we would just write down like H/I, meaning not sure if that was supposed to be an H or an I. You know, we would all just write it all down, even if it didn't make sense. And sometimes later we could fit it together. We asked him if there was anything he wanted to say to his son, and we got some letters, but it was a little confusing. This is not an exact thing. I don't have the transcript on me, but we got something like this, right? And so we kind of just figured it didn't work out. But then, do you see it? But then the next day I was looking at it and I was like, if this was supposed to be this letter and this was supposed to be this letter, and you just like swap two, all the letters were there. It was really close. So yeah, the first story, maybe it was a dream. The thing in the sky, I mean, that I'm positive of. 2 other people saw it. We were very lucid. Don't know what that was, but I mean, probably something man-made, I guess. Or a meteorite, I don't friggin' know. But, you know, not that crazy. It's not like we saw a little alien in it waving to us, unfortunately. The Ouija board stuff, you know, maybe it's our subconscious, but if it is, it's still pretty cool. The seance one is pretty weird. So yeah, those are my personal spooky / paranormal stories. Nothing quite on the level of playing Mario Kart with Bigfoot or kissing an apparition, you know, but they're true. They're my stories. I have not embellished anything. I do have one other story, but I want to do some research, and I feel like I might be able to make a whole video out of that one. It deals with something that some friends and I found on the internet in the late 90s or early 2000s that was creepy and scary and maybe dangerous, but more on that later. Anyway, what do you think of these stories? Got any theories? Got any stories you want to share? If you're someone who's going to be on down the unicorn hole later, save them. But otherwise, let me know. No judgment in the comments. I'm always lurking in there. If you leave a comment, I will respond. I read everything. I'm a little baby artist, so I can still do that. Oh, I do have one more weird story. We were camping one time, my wife and me and Michael from Weekly Words and Grammar and a couple other people, and I woke up in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. to the sound of like a mech footstep with like pneumatic decompression after it, like, and I like half asleep, and I was like, what the fuck? Mecha Godzilla? And I didn't hear another one, and I just rolled my ass over and went back to sleep. And the next day I checked, but unfortunately, no mech prints.